Chapter 21, Paying the Debt. Caroline did not tell her sisters what she had done for Wally. She didn't even tell them what Wally had been planning to give her. It was a secret between Wally and Caroline. For the rest of the week, she did not want to poke Wally in the back, bump his shoulder, tweak his ear, or run her ruler along the back of his neck. The Hapfords and the Malloys pretty much stayed to themselves. Until Sunday morning, that is, when Buckman awoke to 4 inches of snow. The girls were awakened by their father, who poked his head into every bedroom in turn. Eddie, Beth, Caroline. And when each girl rose upon her elbow and looked at him, he said, "It snowed again. It's Sunday morning, and there are 3 snow shovels in the garage. It's a good way to earn some money to pay off your debt, so I suggest you get up now." There were groans and whispered protests from the 3 bedrooms, but the girls had no choice except to pull themselves out of bed into their sweatpants and sweatshirts, and after a hot oatmeal breakfast, to stagger sleepily out to the garage. They stood looking at the 3 snow shovels lined up like sentries against one wall. "I don't even know how much to charge," Eddie said, her shoulders hunched. "We never had to do this before." "$5 a house," Caroline suggested. "Even if we did every house on Island Avenue, we wouldn't have enough to pay the rest of what we owe." All 3 girls were grumpy at being awakened, and Eddie in particular had that look in her eye. "Let's go across the river and knock on the Hatford's door," she said. "Why?" "Just to make them feel guilty, to show them that we're up and working while they're still lazing around, that we can shovel just as fast as they can." "Yeah, let's." With shovels over their shoulders like workers in a salt mine, the girls traipsed down the hill and across the river of the swinging bridge, icicles hanging off the cable handrails. There was no sign of activity at the Hatfords or any other house on the street. The Hatfords' newspaper was still lying on a heap of snow out by the road. Beth picked up the paper, and the girls waded through the snow and clomped up the steps onto the porch. Beth knocked. They could hear a chair scrape the floor inside, then footsteps, and finally Mrs. Hatford opened the door, followed by Jake. "Why, my goodness, it's the Malloy girls at 8 o'clock in the morning. Won't you come in and have some cocoa?" Jake backed up as though afraid that they might, and Caroline noticed that he was still wearing his pajama bottoms and t-shirt. "No, thank you," said Beth. "We just wondered if you wanted your sidewalk and steps shoveled. Only $5. "Well, aren't you the early birds, though? And here I have 4 boys with strong backs who—" "We're trying to earn money. We sort of owe our dad. So we thought we'd start with you." "Oh, well, in that case, ordinarily I'd have the boys do the shoveling, but you girls go right ahead, and when you're through, come inside for the $5 and some cocoa as well." "Mom!" Jake wailed, but the door closed, and Eddie, Beth, and Caroline exchanged grins as they thrust their shovels into the snow on the steps and began to scrape and push. They could hear pounding footsteps from inside and knew that Jake was waking up Josh and Wally and Peter, and together the 4 boys were probably looking out a window at them right now. "I'll bet they just can't stand this," Beth said. "Us doing the shoveling for them." "I don't know about that," said Caroline. "Maybe they can stand it very well. Maybe they love to see us work." But Eddie agreed with Beth. "They'll be embarrassed as anything. Imagine having the neighbors see girls shoveling the sidewalk for boys." "What do you bet they come out and order us to go home?" said Beth. "Well, if you're right, they'll probably come out and do it for us. They'll just have to prove they're stronger and bigger and smarter and faster when they're really dumber than doorbells and slower than snails." They had finished the steps and half the sidewalk when suddenly the front door opened and out came Jake and Josh, followed by Wally and Peter, all wearing boots and jackets and mittens and caps. "Don't let them push us off," whispered Eddie. "No matter what they say, their mom said we can do it." "Shovel faster," murmured Caroline. "Don't even look at them," said Beth. Caroline was shoveling as fast as she could when 4 pairs of boots appeared in front of her, and she looked up to see the Hatford brothers looking back. "Need some help?" asked Josh. "No." "Really?" "We're doing just fine," Eddie responded. "I know, but how are you going to do all the other houses on the street? Mom said you're trying to earn some money." "So what?" said Eddie. "We can do the sidewalks up one side of the street and down the other all by ourselves." "Eddie," whispered Beth, "we can't." "Well, we thought maybe you'd like us to help," Josh told her. "I mean, you could do one side of the street and we'll do the other, or maybe we could work together on the same driveway." "Yeah, and you guys walk off with all the money? No way." Wally spoke up. "What if we said you could have all the money?" Eddie, Beth, and Caroline stared at the 4 boys as though they had sprung 4 new heads. "You've got to be kidding me," said Caroline. "No, we're not," Peter piped up. Josh said we're going to help you so you won't be mad at us anymore. Hush, Peter, Josh muttered. Well, if you're going to help, then help. Don't just stand there gabbing, Eddie snapped, still not trusting. She dumped a shovelful of snow so close to Wally's feet she could have buried him had he been any closer. In response, Wally dug up a shovelful of snow and dumped it close to where Eddie was standing. Then the four boys began madly shoveling snow, dumping it as close to the girls as they could get without actually touching them, and the girls madly shoveled back. In less than 2 minutes, the rest of the Hatford sidewalk was as clean as a bald-headed baby. Well, said Beth, when she looked around and discovered that they were at the end of the sidewalk, that didn't take long. Josh walked down the road to the next house and knocked on the door. Shovel your steps and walk, he asked. Only $5 to have it done in 5 minutes. Driveway's $5 extra. 5 minutes, said the neighbor, looking out. I wondered how I'd get to church this morning. Okay, it's a deal. And so it went. People who had never paid before to have someone shovel their walk and driveway paid $5 or $10 just to have it done in 5 minutes. It got to be a game after a while. Who could do their side of the walk or driveway faster, the boys or the girls? Who could dump their snow closest to the other side without actually dumping it on anyone? It wasn't long before they had earned $40. Only when Peter began to complain that his feet were cold did Caroline realize they hadn't collected yet from Mrs. Hatford. And so, some of them dragging their shovels, others with shovels over their shoulders, they headed back up the block, their breath frosty in front of them, and slogged through the snow to the Hatfords. Hey, said Peter, I have a great idea. We could have sort of a business. Whenever it snows, we could go out together and make a lot of money. Yeah, and give it all to the girls, Jake said. Why not, said Eddie. We're worth it. Ha! You give these girls money, they buy you presents like boxes filled with cat puke and mouse feet. You should talk, said Caroline. You were going to give me a pair of underpants. Your underpants. But you were trying to trap us in the garage, said Wally. We wouldn't have done it if you hadn't been spying on us from the loft in the first place. We wouldn't have been meeting up there if we didn't think you were plotting something new just to bug us. A car was pulling up into the Hatfords' driveway just as the three Malloy girls and the four Hatfords came dragging their shovels along the sidewalk. They stopped and watched the car. The driver's door opened. One booted foot came out and settled itself in the driveway. Then the other foot, a hand ahead, until finally a woman in a blue coat was out of the car and looking around. Well, hi, Wally, Jake, Josh, and Peter, too. My goodness, how are you? The woman said. Would you believe I haven't worn boots since we moved to Georgia? The boys were speechless and could only stand and stare because there, going up their sidewalk to their front porch, was Mrs. Benson, mother of their 5 best friends, the best friends the Hatfords had in the whole wide world. Well, maybe. 22. Company. When Mrs. Benson saw the girls, however, she stopped and looked them over. Would these be Coach Malloy's daughters by chance? She asked Wally. Yes, he said. Mrs. Benson studied them over the rim of her glasses. I see, she said. Mrs. Hatford was holding open the door. She knows, breathed Wally. Knows what? Asked Eddie, but Wally only swallowed. Did you write the Bensons and tell on the girls? Whispered Josh accusingly. Jake, however, looked hopeful. Maybe they're coming back, he said. He ran up the steps after Mrs. Benson, and Wally and Josh followed wordlessly, leaving the girls staring after them on the sidewalk. Mother was hugging Mrs. Benson in the hallway, and Dad was saying, Well, Shirley, this is a surprise. Actually, I'm spending the weekend with my sister in Elkins, Mrs. Benson explained, but I thought it might be a good idea to check on things here, especially after the letters the boys got from Wally. Wally swallowed. Letters? What letters? Said Mom. The letter about how Caroline tried to kill Beth, I'll bet, said Peter. You know, said Dad, I think we should sit down at the kitchen table and have a cup of coffee. And when he saw Wally edging toward the stairs, he said, You guys are included. Have some orange juice. The grown-ups sat at one end of the big country table in the kitchen, the 4 boys on the other, while Mrs. Benson drank her coffee. We just didn't know what to make of it. Those girls throwing hammers around up in the bedroom and painting our garage. Granted, it's old, but it served us well. And I think that a man employed by the college, a coach in particular, would let us know if he wanted to make changes to our property. Father looked at Wally. I guess I exaggerated a little, Wally said. I guess you do, said his father. Suppose you start at the beginning. Jake was giving Wally his traitor look, but Josh seemed to be nodding, urging him on. So Wally explained. We were holding club meetings up in the loft just to bug the girls, and they decided to trap us up there. So Eddie got some paint and painted the ladder, and when we started to come down, we got paint on our clothes. What? Don't worry, we got it out with turpentine. Then, when Mr. Malloy came home, he got some on his sport jacket, and now the girls have to earn money to pay for it. That's all. All they painted were the rungs of the ladder, and they've really taken pretty good care of the place. My goodness, you do exaggerate, don't you? Mrs. Benson said. Wally hoped that once the truth was out, that might be the end of it. He thought now that he had told how it really happened, Mrs. Benson would say, well, then, I see there's nothing to worry about, and go back to Georgia. She sipped her coffee thoughtfully for a moment, then said, it's hard being away from your own house for so long. I wanted to feel at home in Georgia, and in some ways I do. The boys seem to like it a lot, but I miss Buckman. I suppose if we come back, I'll miss Georgia too. Has Hal made a decision yet? Not really. He's had one offer from the college where he's teaching now, and he's waiting to hear from some other schools before he decides. I suppose it could go either way. It would just be nice to know that if we do come back to Buckman, though, there will be a house to come home to. Jake and Josh, Wally and Peter excused themselves as soon as they thought they could get away and made a beeline for the stairs. Once they got to Jake and Josh's bedroom, they closed the door and sat down on the beds. Wally, you jerk, Josh said, still mad that he had told on the girls. But Jake asked, what are we going to do if the Bensons don't come back? What are we going to do if they do? Said Josh. What do you mean? Come on, Jake. The girls have been fun and you know it. Yeah, but we used to play ball with the guys every evening in the summer. We can play ball with the girls, said Josh, Eddie especially. We used to explore the cove and fool around the old coal mine. We can do that with the Malloys, said Wally. The girls are nice. They make good cookies, said Peter. Jake threw back his head. What's happened to you guys? You've been brainwashed. You know we've been waiting for the Bensons to come back. We always wanted the Bensons to come back. Maybe we could have both. Maybe the Bensons will come back and the Malloys will stay. Not likely. Buckman isn't that big of a place. They don't need 2 football coaches at the college. The boys sat on their beds staring at each other. The thing is, Coach Malloy might ask his family what they want to do. If they all hate it here, they'll probably go back. If the girls really want to stay, though, maybe he will. You think they'll want to stay after all we've done to them? Hey, they'll probably stay because of what we've done. They had as much fun as we did, Josh told him. Wally walked out in the hall to see whether Mrs. Benson had left yet to go check on her house. She was still downstairs, in fact. She was on the phone in the hallway at that very moment talking to Mrs. Malloy. Well, I'm glad to know you're enjoying our house. I didn't want to just come barging over with no warning at all, but I did want to see it. I wondered if there was anything needing repair. I see. Yes. Well, that's fine then. Of course I'll come by. Upstairs, the boys crowded around the door listening. When Mrs. Benson hung up, she said, well, I'm going over there and see for myself if they're taking care of things. Once you open your house to renters, you have no idea what's happening to it, do you? I'm afraid not, said Mother, but I feel quite sure the Malloys are responsible people, Shirley. I hope so. The boys watched from the crack in the door as Mrs. Benson pulled on her coat again, went out the door, and drove her sister's car around the road bridge to the Malloys on Island Avenue. For the next hour and a half, they didn't leave the bedroom. Using their father's binoculars, they watched out an upstairs window, half expecting to see a moving van pull up the avenue and all the Malloys pile out of the house. Instead, they finally saw Mrs. Benson come out of the house. She went into the garage for a minute, then came back out and got into the car. What do you suppose happened, breathed Wally. I don't know. We could call and find out. Jake shook his head, and then all eyes fell on Peter. They never did give their $5 for shoveling our sidewalk. Peter, how about you take it over and to them along with a note? Sure. Every time I go to their house, I get cookies. So Wally went downstairs and got the $5 from his mother along with the lecture. What goes on in the Malloy house is strictly between them and the Bensons, and you shouldn't be telling tales. If you can't write a letter without exaggerating, Wally, don't write one at all. Wally went back upstairs with the money, and Josh wrapped it up in a piece of notebook paper on which he had written, so, are you guys getting kicked out or what? Give it to one of the girls, Peter, not the parents, okay? Peter stuffed the note with the $5 in his pocket, and his brothers watched as he went across the front lawn, boots parka, toward the swinging bridge. In summer, when leaves were on the trees, you could hardly see the Malloy house unless you went through the trapdoor in the attic and up onto the widow's walk of the roof. But now, with the trees bare, they could see many things across the river and they couldn't see at any other time. Still, the binoculars helped. They watched as Peter shuffled along. Every few feet, he scraped the snow away with his boot to see what was beneath. If he went any slower, he'd be crawling, said Jake. If he went any slower, it'd be Monday by the time he got there. If he went any slower, the Malloys could be moved out and back to Ohio. It had begun to snow again, and big frosty flakes drifted down from the sky. The boys groaned as Peter stopped in the middle of the bridge again with his head thrown back and tried to collect snowflakes on his tongue. Finally, he reached the other side and slowly made his way up the hill. An hour went by, an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half. What could he be doing over there, groaned Josh. What'd he do? Take a suitcase? Is he moving in? The snow continued to fall. I want you boys to shovel that sidewalk before it gets any deeper, Mother called up. What? We already did it once. You paid the girls to do it. Well, it's got to be done again, Mother said. Just then they saw Peter coming back across the bridge. It took him about as long to get home as it had taken him to cross it in the first place. Finally, when he opened the front door and began stomping his feet in the hallway, Jake and Josh rushed down and brought him up so fast he didn't even have time to get his boots off. There was chocolate syrup around his mouth, cookie crumbs on his jacket. Peter looked dazed and happy and kind of sleepy. What did they say? Asked Josh. Are they leaving? Did Mrs. Benson tell them they had to move? In answer, Peter pulled a note out of his pocket and handed it to Wally. Wally read it silently first, then swallowed and read it aloud to his brothers. So you were the ones who told the Bensons about the murder up in Beth's room and our painting the garage. And now you want to know whether we're leaving or not? You want to know whether we're going back to Ohio or if your old buddies will be back from Georgia? Well, you know what? We're not going to tell you. And if you think it was hard waiting for Peter to get back across the bridge with this note, just think what it will be like waiting till next summer for your answer. Eddie, Beth, and Caroline. P.S. Thanks for your help in shoveling the sidewalks. Double P.S. Did you notice it's snowing again? Did you notice we took your shovels? Did you know it will cost you $5 to get them back? The Womper, the Weirdo, and the Crazy.